Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of What's on Rochelle's Table. So I am currently working on #SoLuckyJar 2025. This is the second pattern picked from the So Lucky Jar. Now this one is also #Make9 2025. So I'm doing 2 for the price of 1 as well. Now, this states it's easy to sew. I'm going to put it like this. I don't feel like it's easy to sew when you have to deal with a fly front zipper, but we will see. Just keep that in mind. Now, looking at the back of the pattern envelope, my waist is a 34.5, but my hips is a 46.5. With ease, I like to have at least 48 inch. Okay, so looking at the finished garment measurement for a 48.5 would be 24W. Now, remind you, I am using a pink poplin fabric that I picked up from Fashion Fabric Clubs a while ago. So with that says if I want to cut a 48, I need to be cutting a 24W. Now, looking at the hips, a 48 hip for a 24W, it also says it's a 48.5. So it looks like a 1/2 inch ease for the hips, okay? Now, my waist, like I mentioned, is a 34.5. With ease, I want at least an inch, 1.5 inches, just in case I want to eat or put a belt on, all right? So let's just say that, for the waist to go to about a 35.5 or 36, a 36 is a 20W, but the hips is a 44. So that means that between the waist for the body measurement, which is the 35, and the waist on the finished garment measurement is the 36, that's a 1 inch ease difference, okay? Now for the hips is about a 1/2 inch. So what I'm seeing here is once you get towards the women's sizes, the ease for between the waist is 1 inch, and then the hips are a 1/2 inch. All right. So looking at this, I think what I'm going to do is cut a 24 based off of my hip measurement, but sides down the waist. I feel like that would be easier. Yes, I could size up the hips, but to size up the hips 4 inches, I don't want that peak or that curve or anything. So therefore, what I'm going to do is cut based off of my hips on this one and sides down the waist. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with cutting all the pattern pieces out. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I have the pattern pieces cut. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take pattern piece number 4 and pattern piece number 5. I'm going to go ahead and figure out what sides I want to cut. Now, just looking at the pattern piece number 4, the front of the pants, I want my pattern piece to be 48 inches on the hip. So I'm going to measure the size 24 across and see if I would get 48 inches or 48.5 front and back pattern piece. All right. And then I'll figure out the crotch seam and all that good stuff after doing that. All right. So let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and get started with seeing what the hips are going to be before I determine what size I'm going to cut. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have determined which sides I'm going to cut, before I cut out the sides, I want to go ahead and take a look at my waistband pieces. So I have a left front, a right front, and a back waistband. I'm going to move my pant pattern pieces out of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure waistline all the way across at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on all three pieces. So that's pattern piece 10, 11, and 12. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on that now. All right, so now that I have my waistbands done, so let me try to kind of share how I did the waistband. So before I cut anything out, I like to see what the waist is going to, where the waist is going to fall at in terms of the sides, okay? Now, like I mentioned before, my waist is a 34 and a half, and give or take 36 would be ideal, of inch and a half to just basically an inch to inch and a half ease, and I could put a belt on. All right. Now for what I'm getting, I did each of the waist and it comes out to be 38 and a quarter. That's 2 inches too much. Okay. So what I can do is at the side seam, come in. Now, because you're looking at this one's cut on the fold, the back is cut on the fold, and then the front pieces are cut in one. So what happens is there's 3 different pattern pieces, okay? So if I measured across, because this, now remind you, it does say cut 2, but you have a left and a right front. So basically you're going to cut 2. One's going to be your yoke one's going to be your facing pieces, okay? So with that being said, where it says cut 2, I'm not multiplying it by 2 simply because one's going to be my facing piece and one's going to be my regular piece, if that makes sense, okay? Follow along, please. So basically what I did was at the waist, I measured all the way across to the sides that I am cutting. In this case, it's a size 20, but now I need to sides down to get roughly about 25 and a quarter, okay? Which means I need to take off 3 inches. Now, what I can do is I could take off 1 inch in each place, and that's 3 inches, right? And what I mean by that is because I'm taking 1 inch, 2 inches, but this is cut on the fold. So I cannot do that, all right? So because this is actually 4 different pattern pieces, 3 pattern pieces, it's going to be 3/4 or 0.75 off each one. And I know you're like, how is that 3 inches? I'm going to explain. All right. So the left front, I'm going to take 3/4 or 0.75 off the 20 inch, right? So 0.75 there. And I need to take 3 inches off of the waistband. All right. Now at this side where the notch is, this is the center front, this is the side seam. You're taking it off of the side seam. On pattern piece number 10, I need to remove 3/4 of an inch. So that makes 0.75 from here, or 3/4, 0.75 or 3/4 from this one. And then because this one is cut on the fold, I need to take 3/4 off, but it's going to be twice because when you open it, you have 2 sides. So when it's cut on a fold, you already have 2 sides, okay? So if I add point plus 0.75 plus 0.75, because that's 2 sides, that gives me 3 inches, okay? So what I need to do to my waistband is at the 20, I need to remove 3 inches. Because if I add up all the numbers, And I know you're wondering, like, how did you get the numbers? So let me explain the numbers right quick. So I measured across from center front, or right here at this line, all the way across to 20 inches. 20W. It gave me 11. All right. Now this seam right here says 3/8 of an inch seam allowance right here. Let me scoot it down so you can see. We are talking about pattern piece number 11. Seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. This side seam is 5/8 of an inch, and 3/8 plus 5/8 is 1 inch. Okay. So 11 minus the seam allowance of 1 inch means that from here to this 20 is 10 inches. All right. I did the same thing for pattern piece number 10. I measured from the 20, which is the size that I'm cutting, all the way over to the front portion, and that gave me a 13. Now, 5/8 plus 5/8 is 1.25, or 1 1/4. So I took out 1.25, which gave me 11.75. Now I know you're like, well, Rochelle, it says fabric 2. Yes, it does, but one is going to be the yoke. So I cannot accommodate that as 2 right front pieces, if that makes sense. So we have a left, we have a right, and then we have a back cut on the fold. All right. If you are confused, please send me a message, comment below, and let me know how you are confused. All right. So we have a 10, we have 13 across, minus 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance there, which gives me 11.75. All right. Now on pattern piece number 12, it's cut on the fold, which means after you unfold it, after you cut it, you're going to have a side seam here and a side seam there. Okay. So I took across, measured from the center back on that fold all the way across, which gives me 9.125. Now this one I multiplied by 2. Reason being is because it's cut on the fold and I'm going to have 2 sides. So 9.125, or 9 1/8 times 2 is 18.25. All right. I minus the seam allowance 5/8 and 5/8, which is 1.25. And 18.25 minus 1.25 is a 17. All right. How I figured out the circumference after all pieces are sewn together, I took the 10 from pattern piece number 11, pattern piece number 10, the 11.75, and pattern piece number 12, the 17. That gave me 38.75. All right. Now, because I said that's too big, my waist is the 34.5. If I remove 3 inches, that's 35.75. My waist is the 34.5, which means I have about 1.25 inches of ease, and that works perfectly for me. All right. So that's how I was able to do that. So add up your numbers. Okay. And if it's more than what you need, subtract what your waist is. Okay. After you subtract what your waist is, that's what you need to either add, take off. I showed you how to do that. I'm just removing 3/4 of an inch on all 3 pieces. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my fabric and then go ahead and get started with the sew along. Make sure you cut out your fabric. Make sure you transfer all your notches, your dots, your pleats, and your darts. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the rest of this tutorial. Let's go. talk about the instructions for Simplicity 9926, I am doing View See the Pants as part of hashtag Make 9 2025, which is project number 2. Okay. Now, for the spare pants, you're going to need pattern piece number 4 through 12. That will be your front, your back pocket, right fly, left fly, carriers, that which is optional if you want the carriers, but I like to put belts on, so I'm going to do carriers for mine. The right front, the left front, and then you're also going to need the back facing. The back waistband. Those are all the pattern pieces you're going to need, roughly about 9 pattern pieces. Now, to talk about the instructions, now tonight I'm going to be working from step number 1 to step number 13. So just to kind of give you a little idea of what we're going to be doing, I'm going to start off by making the darts. I have already done number 1. That's basically fusing, interfacing to the wrong side of pattern piece 7, 8, 10, 11, and 12, which would be your fly areas as well as your front and back waistband, okay? Or facing pieces, I should say. All right, so I have already done that. So I'm going to start off doing the pleats on the front and the back, which is step number 2. And not the pleats and the darts, I should say. So there's pleats on the front, darts in the back, which is number 5. Then I'm going to do the inseam of my pants. That's step number 4. Step number 5 is the crotch seam. All right, that's step number 5. Number 6 is put on the pocket. Number 7 is sew the side seam. 8 is finish off those pockets. Number 9 is the carriers. So I'm going to do that. 10 is also the carriers. Number 11 is attach the carriers to your pants. And then step number 12 would be to go ahead and start working on the right and left waistband. And then 13 is attach it to your pants. That's all I'm going to be working on today. And then tomorrow I'll pick up 14 through, I think it was 14 through 21. I believe. I'm going to look at my calendar and I'll put it up on the screen. So day number 2 is going to be like 14 through 21. And then I'll finish off on day number 3 before the weekend. Okay. Now today is March the 19th. As you can see that. March the 19th today. So right now it is 8:14 at night. So I have roughly about an hour and 45 minutes until 10 p.m. to work on these 13 steps, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to put this aside and let's go ahead and get started with this sew along. But before we get started, you guys know I have a video about my toolkit. So I'm going to drop it in the description box below so you're able to see that. Also, in order to keep sew alongs to the channel, do me a favor and donate to the channel. Give me some super thanks. Donation to say that you like content like this and you want me to continue doing sew alongs for you. Give what your heart can desire, you know, $5, $10, $15, whatever you see fit for your budget. All right. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the pattern pieces you will need in order to construct the pants. Let's go ahead and talk about it now. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the pattern pieces you will need in order to construct these pants. First pattern piece is pattern piece number 4, which is the front of the pants. You need to cut 2. Make sure you transfer all your dots, notches, markings, pleats, darts, everything. Make sure you also transfer the stitching line, which will be for the right side, and I'll show you that when we get there. All right, so make sure you transfer that line, and I'm going to show you when we get there. All right. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 5, your back. You need to cut 2. Make sure you transfer your darts, transfer your notches, and your dots as well. Next up is pattern piece number 6, your pockets. If you want pockets on your pants, however, this is optional, but you need to cut 4. Next up is pattern piece number 7, the right fly facing. You need to cut 1 of fabric and interface it. Pattern piece number 8, your left fly. You need to cut 2 of fabric and interface 1. So it should have 1 with interfacing, 1 without interfacing. Pattern piece number 9, which are your carriers. You need to cut 1 of fabric. Pattern piece number 10, your right front waistband. You need to cut 2 of fabric and interface 1. Make sure you transfer your buttonhole, both of those. And then you have pattern piece number 11, your left front waistband. You need to cut 2 of fabric and interface 1. And the last pattern piece is pattern piece number 12, your back waistband. You need to cut 2 on the fold of fabric and also interface 1. Those are all the pieces that you're going to need in order to construct these pants. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and grab pattern piece number 4, your front. And like I mentioned already, you're going to want to mark out all of your notches, your dots, your pleat lines. You're going to want to mark out all of those, okay? So I have mine already. Just for reference, I have cut out a size 20W, okay? Now, before we get started now, I'm going to tell you I am using a magenta colored pink poplin from Fashion Fabric Club online, okay? So I purchased this online a little while ago, and that is what I'm using, okay? Now, first things first, I need you to transfer this stitching line. This is for your fly front area, okay? So, just to grab pattern piece number 4, and if you notice, the right side of my pattern piece, number 4, is down on my pants. And right here, it did say that this is going to be stitching line for right side. Now, this is my left side when wearing it, not my right side. So it needs to actually be on this side, okay? So what I need to do is definitely, I did not pay attention to that when I did that. So I need to go ahead and mark it on this side for my fly, but then mark where it says fold line for left side on this side. Now, what I'm not going to do is flip it over because it's the same. I'm not going to do that, but instead, I'm going to actually do it right. That's why I said I'm going to show you guys all kinds of mess ups and everything in the sew along, because that's how you guys learn. Now, I haven't messed up. I just did not mark the right side. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark it for you on camera so you could pretty much see what I'm talking about when I say make sure you transfer all your dots, your marking, your notches, all of that. Make sure you transfer all of that as well. All right. So I did that. So now you know this is the area I need. Okay, so I'm going to put an X right here so I know use this as my right piece. This is my left piece. Okay, so we're not going to do that. What I'm going to do is flip it over. Okay. And I'm going to transfer this line right here. So I'm going to put a dot right here, and I already have it marked at the very top, right? And I'm going to transfer that line. All right. So I'm going to move my pattern piece out of the way, grab my ruler, and go from the top to the bottom. So I have my ruler, and I'm just going to make a line from the top to the bottom, or from the dot up, whichever one works best for you. All right. So now I'm going to put an X right here to show that we're not doing this. We're just doing this line. Okay. Now that I fixed that, we're going to go ahead and do our pleats. All right. So now I'm going to move one pattern piece out of the way. So I'm just going to use this one, but you're going to do it on both of them. I'm going to move the other one out of the way. So what I'm going to do is the pleats need to go towards the side seam. So I'm going to take this one, take this where I have the lines at, and I'm going to move it over to the other pleat. Now, instead of sewing across, like basting across, I'm going to sew from the top down to that dot, okay? So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to pin at that dot and then pin again. And I'm going to sew basically about 1/4 of an inch away on both pleats, okay? So I'm just going to sew from the top down to this dot right here, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now I'm going to pin the other one because you guys know your girl do not like to go back and forth to the sewing machine 50 million times. So I'm going to grab my other pants leg, right? And I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I have marked the direction that I want. That's why I marked it. I need the pleat to go towards the side seam and not towards the front, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pleat and it's going to go towards the side seam instead of the front of my pants. So I'm just going to do this, make sure it's lined up. Then I'm going to check where that dot is and pin right there, okay? And then I'm just going to pin up the rest of my pant leg, all right? Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew from the top all the way down to that dot, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now I'm going to move this out of the way because I like to do several things all at once. So just move your front pattern pieces out of the way. After you have pinned, grab pattern piece number 5, which are your back pattern pieces, okay? Now, we have done darts so many times on this channel. However, I'm going to show you how to do darts again because I know some of you guys are new to following me. So I want to make sure that I am being accommodated, accommodate those who have not been following me and new to my channel. So if you are new to the channel, welcome. If you have not done so already, do what's free, and that is subscribe, okay? Because you will love it here. All right, so now that I have this dart, I'm going to pinch out my dart. Now this is the wrong side, okay? So I'm going to take it, make sure that my lines are meeting up at the, front and the back. Check both the front and the back. Make sure, I'm going to do it again. Take a pin, put it in, see if it's coming out on the line in the back, and it does. And then I'm going to pin there, come back to the front, and make sure it is lined up. So I'm going to do both of my darts on the back. So go ahead and I have the front one done, one leg done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. So go ahead and pinch out your darts for the other leg now. All right, so now that I have my darts done in the back, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the sewing machine using a regular length stitch. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning. So all the way to this dot, do not back stitch at the end of the dart. You're just going to pull up thread and tie it 2 to 3 times to secure that. Also, on the front, which is pattern piece number 4, where you did the pleats, you're going to back stitch at the beginning, so all the way down to the dot, and back stitch at the dot. All right? So let's go ahead and do that now. So go ahead and do that now. All right, I'm at the end of the dart. What I'm going to do is lift my needle, lift my presser foot, pull some thread, enough for you to tie, and then tie it off 2 to 3 times. All right, so go ahead and do that, and let's go ahead and do the pleat, which is your front pattern pieces now. All right, so I have the front of my pattern, or front of my pants, which is pattern piece number 4. This is the pleats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at 1/4 of an inch, which is this middle, tick or whatnot on my presser foot. And I'm going to back stitch using a regular length stitch. My regular length stitch is at 2.5 millimeters. And then I'm just going to sew all the way down to this dot. Go ahead and do that now. All right, I'm approaching the dot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to back stitch, cut my threads, and that's what it looks like. Now go ahead and press this in place. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the pleats done in the front, that's pattern piece number 4. I'm going to move that out of the way. I also have the darts done in the back right here. That's what it looks like, which is pattern piece number 5. We are now on step number 4, which is you're going to stitch front to back at the inseam of the leg. So I'm going to put pattern piece number 5, which is the dart. Put that on the table. I'm going to place pattern piece number 4 on top of that with right sides together. Make sure you have the right sides together and not wrong side to right side. People have done that, so just make sure you don't have that going on. And I'm going to basically make sure I match up my inseams. Make sure I match up my notches, which are right here on that inseam. Pin there and then pin all the way down the length of your pants leg, okay? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the inseam pin using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, sew the inseams and then finish them off. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the inseam sewn, this is what it looks like. I'm going to open up my pants, okay? Now what I want you to do is you want pattern piece number 5, which is the one with the dart, on the left side and the pleats on the right side, all right? So what that looks like is basically, I'm going to do it just like this. I'm going to open this out. All right. And what it looks like is my pleat, which is pattern piece number 5, which is the back on this side. And number 4, which is, I'm sorry, my dart on the right, the left side, my pleat on the right side. Okay. That's what it looks like. Just make note that you have all of that, and then you're going to take your other pants leg and with right sides together, you're going to put your other pant leg on top of it. Now, one thing I want to mention is the dart should have been pressed towards the center, which means the front of your pants instead of the back, okay? I forgot to mention that. But what we're going to do is we're going to pin the crotch seam, okay? So what that means is basically you should have a dot. You probably can't see it on mine, but my dot is right here. I'm going to show that in a minute, okay? So I'm just going to match up my inseam lines, right? And I'm going to make sure that the inseam is to the back, which means to the left, okay? Because that's the back of my pants. And I'm going to pin there first. Just like that. All right? I hope you're tracking with me. Stay with me, okay? Now, I'm going to pin at the notch right here in the front. Then there's a dot right there. I want to pin at that dot, okay? You should have a dot in the front of your pants. All right? Now what you want to do is go to the back, which is this part right here, where you have your dart. You want to pin the 2 double notches in the back of your pants. Okay? Now what you want to do is you want to pin from top all the way down to the inseam that you did. So pin all of that, making sure that you have the raw edges even. All right? So go ahead and pin the crotch seams now. All right, so now that I have the crotch seam pin using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, start at the back, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way around the curve. And when you get to this dot right here, you want to back stitch at that dot, all right? Once you do that, I'm going to sew the first one at 5/8 inch and then the second stitch at 3/8 of an inch. Back stitching at the beginning and at the end, stopping at that dot, and then I'm going to finish off my seam allowance, okay? So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my inseam done, now let me recap the inseam. I started at the beginning and so all the way to this dot, right? Then I made a clipping at the dot, not to cut through my stitching, okay? And then because this is the front and this is where the zipper is going to go, I went ahead and separately, I went ahead and serged this piece, this area, all right, the raw edges. Now, I will be putting some interfacing there for the fly. You're going to need some interfacing there you should already have it interfaced already. But go ahead and serge the front pattern pieces from the top down to that dot, okay? Like you see here, all right? And then make sure you finished off that crotch seam, all right? Now that we did that, go ahead and grab pattern piece number 6, your pockets, all right? And what we're gonna do, you're gonna put the pockets to the front and the back. Now I have tons of tutorials on how to pin your pockets to your pants. So if you missed any of those, you can always go to a tutorial that features pockets and see how to do that. Now I am just going to put it on the front just to show you one, but you're going to need to do all 4 pockets on your own, okay? Now let me grab a white marking pencil to mark the wrong sides of my pocket. So this is pattern piece number 6, and I'm gonna make sure I follow suit with all 4 pattern pieces, okay? So go ahead, if you have not done so already, mark the wrong side of your pattern piece for your pockets. Now I'm just using some regular pink fabric. I'm not going to accent it. And what I mean by that is basically using a different fabric for the pocket, not this time at least, all right? So what I'm gonna do is with right sides together, I'm going to pin the pocket to the side of my pants, matching up those notches and dots, okay? So I'm gonna move this one out the way. I'm gonna turn this pattern piece so you're able to see that, or pair of pants, right? So I'm gonna match up the notches right here, and I'm going to pin. Now, I think in the instructions, it tells you to sew it using a 1/4 of an inch, but I like to do mine at 3/8 of an inch from the beginning to the end of the pocket, and then finish off my seam allowance, making sure that my blade is on my serger is disengaged, meaning that make sure you turn off the knife of your serger when you are serging the edge, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and do all 4 pockets. So go ahead and do all 4 pockets. So from the top to the bottom using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and finish off your seam allowance. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the pockets onto the side, this is my front on the table. I'm gonna go ahead and put my back right on top, and I'm gonna do the same thing, pinning my side pocket and stitch this pockets and side seams, okay? Now I'm gonna pin one in place so you can see it, but you should know how to do the pockets and the side seam by now if you have used any of my sew-alongs or tutorials, okay? So I'm just gonna pin, but you will need to do the rest of the other pocket on your own, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and pin this pocket in place. So I'm going to first make sure my pant leg is not bunched up or twisted or anything like that. And it's because this is long, make sure that it's laying flat on the table. And I'm going to pin, okay? So I'm going to literally start at the dot up here where my pocket is, making sure that my seam allowance are pressed towards my pocket. So I'm going to pin at this dot right here. And then there's a dot right there that I want to make sure I pin at. So make sure that your seam allowance is matched up. And I'm going to pin at this dot up here. If you need to put some pins elsewhere, you can. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and pin around the pocket area, just like this. I don't know what step we are in, but I think we are somewhere between 7 and 8 right now. I'm only going to get to step number 13 tonight, okay? And I'll check in on time right after I pin. All right, so now that I have the side seam pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm gonna start at the hem, back stitch at the hem, so all the way up to that first dot, back stitch at the dot, break my thread, start at that second dot, back stitch at that dot, so all the way up. After I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch around the pocket and then press the pocket. After I do that, I'm gonna make sure the pocket is to the front of my pant and then base the top edge of my pocket, okay? That's what I'm going to be doing. Make sure you finish off the seam allowance for both your pocket and your side seams, all right? So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I went ahead and sewed up the pocket area. It's looking good. The side seams as well. This is what it's looking like so far. The front is not done, but everything else is done in the back. One thing I want to mention right now is try your pants on. Now, I tried mine on. I have a really good fit for my pants. I am loving that they fit in the hips for sure and the bootay area. The only thing that I have to make sure that it fits in is the waist now. So I know the bottom portion fits really good. The waist is the only thing that I'm hoping that everything works out perfectly fine. All right, so let's move these pants off to the side. And the only two things I have to do now, I am currently sitting at 10:08. So I'm going to finish up this part and then be done for the night. So two things I need to do. I'm going to move my pants off to the side. So one of the things I need to do is create my carriers. You could read the instructions for the carrier, but all you need to do is press your carrier hot dog style in half, open it out, and then press both sides to that line and then fold, okay? And press, and then you're going to stitch on that line, all right? So that's how you're going to do your carriers. I don't think I need to tell you that, but you know, after you press, I'm not going to show you this on camera, but once again, you press it in half, open it out, then press both sides to that line. After you press to that line, you're going to fold it in half one more time, and then you're going to stitch on both sides about 1/4 of an inch away. After you do that, you're going to cut this 5 pieces at 4 inches long, okay? So I'll show you how to do that once I press mine in half and all that good stuff, all right? So after the carriers, the only thing left for me to do, I'm going to do this first and then do my carriers in just a second, all right? So grab pattern piece 10, 11, and 12, which are your waistband sections. Now, this is the portion that's not interfaced. You're going to do the same thing to your interface portion. I have already done this off camera, but this is what I did, okay? This is what it's going to look like, all right? Now, one thing I want to mention is if you notice, I put 10, 12, 11 on mine, and that's because I want to keep track of which one is 10, which is the right front, 12 is the back waistband, and 11 is the left front, okay? So I'm going to move that out of the way. Go ahead and we're going to do the same thing for pattern piece number, well, all the pattern pieces. So open out pattern piece number 12, which is the back. All right. And with right sides together, I'm going to take pattern piece number 10 and I'm going to put it on this side right here, which is the left side as you're looking at it on the screen. Okay. And I'm going to pin at that notch. And then if you need a couple of more pins, go ahead and pin it like you see me doing here. And then I'm going to take pattern piece number 11 and with right sides together, you're going to pin 11 in place like you see here. Okay, so I'm going to pin the notches together, right sides together. and I'm going to pin at that notch. And then once again, if you need extra pins, you could definitely put some extra pins there to hold it in place. All right. Now what I'm going to do, now that I have it pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end and press your seam allowance open. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the waistband attached, the front and the back, I'm sorry, the right front and the left front attached to the back, I have the carrier done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my carrier 4 inches long. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure across from here to here, and I'm going to cut 4 inches. And I'm going to cut 5 pieces at 4 inches. So I'm going to cut there. That's 1 piece. All right, so that's 5 pieces you should have. That's even at 4 inches. And really what you're going to do is at every seam, you're going to put your carriers on it. So go ahead and grab your pants. Now I'm just going to show you this portion of how to do. I'm going to like pin mine in place, but you could go ahead and baste yours on as you see fit. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to put 2 in the front and 3 in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically pin, and you're going to stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to pin mine right here. I'm just going to pin this way. Okay. And then I'm going to take my next one and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to basically pin this in place just like this. Take a pen, pin this right here. Then I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to put 1 right here, 1 right there, and 1 in the center, okay? So I'm just going to basically put 1 right here. I'm going to put 1 right here in the center, and then I'm going to put the last one right here on this seam, okay? Now at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to baste across all 5 of them, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the carriers on, this is the last step for tonight, and then I'm done. And then tomorrow it's going to be working on the fly, okay? Which is pattern piece number 7 and 8, which are the only 2 pattern pieces that you should have left after doing this portion tonight. So what we're going to do is go ahead and put on the waistband. So what I'm going to do is turn my pants over, but before I do that, make sure you have done the one without the interfacing, all right? And then you have one with interfacing. Now this one serves as your facing piece, and this one serves as your main piece. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn my pants over with the back side facing up towards me. And then what you're going to do is with right sides together, you have notches at the bottom that matches up to the back of your pants. Make sure you are using the bottom where it's going to look like a frown, not the upper edge, okay? So you're going to pin the waistband to your pants, okay? The uninterfaced waistband, all right? Making sure you match up the side seams, making sure you match up those notches, and pin all the way around, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the waistband on using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, I'm gonna start at the back stitch at the beginning, so all the way to one side, and back stitch at the end. Starting back in the back, still using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, start at the back stitch at the beginning, so all the way to the front, and back stitch at the end, all right? Once you do that, go ahead and trim the seam allowance down and press your seam towards the waistband. All right. So let's go ahead and do that now because this is the final portion that you will need to do tonight. Let's go ahead and get it done now. All right. So now I have the waistband on. Go ahead and trim it down and give it a press towards the waistband. And that is it for tonight. We will continue tomorrow or the next day, one of these days, okay? And what we will be doing next is the left and right fly is the next thing that we're going to be working on. So basically we will be doing steps number 14 to, I think it's 21 or 22, or 23. I think 14 to 23 is the next steps that we're going to be doing in the next session. All right. Well, that's it for the night. I will talk to you in the next one. Peace. Hey, you guys. Happy Thursday. Today is March 20th, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up these pants. The only thing I have left to do is pattern piece number, I think 7 and 8. Let me check. So I have pattern piece number 7 right here, which is the right fly and waistband. I'm sorry, the right fly facing, and then pattern piece number 8, the left fly. So those are the only 2 things I need to do outside of putting on the facing for the waistband. Once again, just to recap, I am currently working on Simplicity 9926. Wrapping up this sew along, then I could go ahead and do the pattern review for it. So I'm going to stop talking and let's go ahead and get into the rest of the sew along today. Let's go ahead and do it now. Hey everyone, welcome to day number 2. We are currently working on Simplicity 9926 and I'm hoping to get the rest of this done, if not the rest, majority of it done tonight. Now, it is currently 8:59, almost 9 o'clock. I only have 1 hour, but the goal is to get from step number 14 to step number 23. That is about 9 steps tonight and then finish up tomorrow. Now, I had some things I had to do because, you know, mommy duties, wife duty comes first before anything else. And I had to work today because today is Thursday, March the 20th. All right. So instead of me rambling, let me go ahead and kind of recap real quick. And then we're going to go ahead and get to sewing starting at step number 14. So yesterday, the last thing we did, or since the last time we spoke, which was AKA yesterday, March the 19th, at about a little after 10, I think I finished up right at about 10 something. But anyway, we went ahead and put on the waistband. You should have trimmed down your waistband and press your waistband towards, your seam allowance towards the waistband. All right. So that's what it's looking like. Make sure when you put on your pattern piece number 10, I didn't say this, but let me show you on the one that's not interfaced real quick. So this middle piece is pattern piece number 12. So when you put your pieces on to sew the side seam, you want 10 on your right side and 11 on your left side. So basically when you pin right side together, make sure your 10 is pinned over here and your 11 is pinned over here, if that makes sense, okay? So it should look like this when you pin it together, okay? I just want to make sure you know that so when it comes time to sew it, it's not incorrect, okay? So I'm going to move my pants off to the side, and actually you don't need to move your pants off to the side because we're going to start working on this zipper situation, all right? So we are on step number 14, and what they want you to do is grab your zipper, and you're going to have the right side of your zipper along this side, which is your left side when wearing it, but right side when looking at it on my table, okay? And what you're going to do is put the zipper stop right where that waistband start, okay? So you want to do it just like that. And then you're going to pin, because what you're going to do is you're going to just base this left side of the zipper on to your pants, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and pin. Now my zipper is 12 inches. but I'm going to end up cutting it off at the end because that's what they had that was as close to my pants as possible, my pant color, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and pin it in place and then go to my sewing machine and I'm just going to baste it on at about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, all right? So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the zipper basted on, so basically I have my zipper pull lined up with that waistband, and then I sewed on the left side right here, as you can see, okay? Now what I'm going to do is move this off to the side real quick. We are now on step number 15. Grab pattern piece number 8, which is your left fly. And then what we're going to do is with right sides together, we're going to pin this outer part right here, but we're going to leave the this straight edge with the notch open, okay? Now, if you look at your pattern piece, it says the seam allowance on this edge is 3/8, but everything else is 5/8, okay? So with right sides together, it's already right sides together, I'm going to pin around that left fly, all right? So go ahead and pin around your left fly now. All right, so now that I am pinned all the way around my left fly, I'm gonna start right here at this end, right here. So I'm just gonna start right here. Using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning. So keeping it lined up with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So all the way around, pivot where I need to. So across this edge right here, and then at the top, back stitch at the end, all right? But make sure you leave this section where the notch is open, all right? Do not stitch that area. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the left fly sewn with right sides together, that's what it looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and trim it down and then turn it right side out and give it a press, all right? So go ahead, trim it down, turn it right side out and give it a press. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have it trimmed down, the next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and turn it right side out. Make sure you grab your point turner if you need to. All right, so now that I have it turned right side out, I'm going to give it a nice press. After I press it, I'm gonna go ahead and make that buttonhole right here, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the left front fly done, this is what it looks like. I went ahead and trimmed it down, turned it right side out, gave it a press, made my buttonhole. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put some fray check there where my buttonhole is. You don't need a lot, just, you know, enough. I'm gonna let that dry. So basically I'm not gonna open up that buttonhole just yet. So now go ahead and grab your pants. And what you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to pin where that notch is. It should meet up right here, but what you want to do before you even do that, don't worry about the notches because you should have notches right here. You probably can't see it because I searched my seam allowance for the front, but you should have notches right there and it should match up to the dot at the top. You probably can't see this on mine, but there's a dot right there. That matches up to that dot. So go ahead and pin that dot and your 2 notches that you have right here should match up to the notches that you have on the front of your pants, okay? So you're gonna pin it over the zipper and you're gonna pin it just like this. It should match up. Now, one thing I forgot to mention to you guys is you should have serged the front portion of your pants. If you have not done so, please go ahead and do that, okay? Now, this bottom dot that you have, that's going to match up with the the dot that you have at the very bottom of your front piece, okay? So make sure you match all of that up. All right, so I'm going to pin that at that dot too. All right, and then just pin in a couple of places like you see me doing here. All right, so now that I have it pinned, I'm gonna switch my presser foot to a zipper foot because I have a zipper foot. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna start at this dot. I'm gonna backstitch at this dot using a basting stitch, backstitch at this dot, and using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna start at that dot, backstitch there, so all the way up to the other dot and backstitch there as well. All right, you're gonna be basting. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, I'm at the sewing machine. I'm gonna show you how to put this fly on, but first you need to grab your zipper foot. This is the foot that is a I, like igloo or India or indigo. And I'm gonna put that one on. All right, so that's on my machine. And then I'm gonna start at, especially line it up with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to switch mine to make sure that it's on a basting stitch. The longest one is 5.0 for me. Now I know that this right here is 5/8 and this one right here is a 1/2 inch. You probably can't see it. Let me try to zoom it in a little bit right here. So I'm just gonna line it up with my presser foot right here for 3/8. Okay, I'm gonna use my presser foot as my 3/8. I'm gonna start at that dot. And I'm gonna be going very slow not to get my zipper, the top portion of my zipper caught in or break a needle, okay? So I'm gonna be going slow. I'm gonna put my presser foot down and I'm going to actually back stitch, okay? So I have mine going a little bit faster than I want, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn that speed down and sew all the way up to the other dot. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I'm quickly approaching where my zipper is up here. I don't want to sew over it, so what I'm going to do is lift my presser foot up. I'm going to basically move it down. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to open up my zipper like this and move it down just a little bit just to move it out of my way. And then I'm going to place my needle back where I ended at. Okay, just like that. And I'm still going to continue at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, sewing on that zipper area, okay? Now I am going to back stitch, but you do not have to. I'm gonna do a little back stitch right there and then sew all the way up to the dot, all right? So go ahead and finish sewing all the way up to that dot, making sure that you do not have any puckers either. All right, I'm at that dot. You do not have to back stitch, but I just like to for me. And I'm going to go ahead, cut my thread, and that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead to the table and I'll tell you what to do next. All right, so now that I have the zipper area complete, well, I should say the left fly on, this is what it's looking like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this to the inside like this, right? So this is what it should be. If you pull that left fly, that's what it should look like. And now what you want to do is give it a press and then you want to top stitch from that dot all the way up to where that waistband line is, okay? So let's go ahead and top stitch that section together now. Now I'm not going to show this on the machine, but you just need to top stitch from the bottom to that the top portion of that zipper. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I have the left fly pressed and to the inside. I'm gonna go ahead, I have my zipper done or pressed, ready. So I'm just gonna back stitch. First of all, I'm gonna switch to a regular stitch. I'm gonna back stitch, all right? And I'm gonna sew really slowly, but as close to the edge as possible. So go ahead and do that now. Now I'm getting as close to the zipper as possible. I'm gonna lift my presser foot And then what I'm going to do is just basically push it to where it's out of my way. All right. That's all I'm going to do for my zipper. Make sure it's out of my way. All right, that should be good to where I cleared the zipper area, and I'm gonna put my presser foot down and then sew the rest of it and backstitch at the end. Voila, and that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead to the table and continue. All right, so now that I have the left side done, I went ahead and top stitched there. Now what we're going to do is grab the right fly facing. This is what it should be looking like, your pants, okay? So now we're going to work on this side. So grab your right fly facing. All right, I'm going to move my pants out of the way for just a second. Don't move them too far. All right. Now, what you need to do is go ahead and finish off this bottom edge of your right fly facing. Now, what we're going to do now, I'm going to, because I have interfacing, I'm going to make sure I can see my notches. Okay. And if you cannot see your notches on the other side, make sure you're able to see that. I can see mine. So I'm just going to turn it to where I can maneuver and you can see it on camera. But we're going to be working on this side, which is the side with the fly. And you have that extension, all right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin at my notches. You're going to be working on this side where you have nothing on there. And I'm going to pin at those notches. I'm going to pin at the top. Now, it should be your top is going to, so your top should extend to the top, but your bottom, this bottom portion should pair with that dot. So make sure that the bottom portion is paired with that dot and you're going to pin. So go ahead and pin all the way up that side. All right, so now I have it pinned, but one thing I'm going to do that I just noticed is that I'm going to have to take off the stitching a little bit of the waistband because apparently it did not want me to pin on that waistband like I have it. So I'm just going to pick it just a little bit to take the waistband off so I'm able to pin on that right fly. All right, just a little bit, not a lot. So I'm going to definitely make sure that I'm able to take just that waistband extension portion off so I'm able to pin the fly like it goes, okay? All right, so now using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and the reason why we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance because it did not tell us to use anything else. So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and sew all the way down to that dot. Now, I can't see my dot on this side, so I'm going to take my marking tool. And here's my dot. I want to make sure it comes out on the other side so I'm able to see it right here, okay? And I'm going to sew all the way down and stop at that dot. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I took off my zipper foot. I am going to put my regular foot back on. Make sure I grab some bobbin thread. Now I'm going to grab my pants and place my right fly underneath my presser foot. I'm going to line it up with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and sew all the way down to that dot. So go ahead and do that. And make sure you back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I got to the dot. I am back stitching, and this is what it looks like, okay? Let's go ahead and continue. All right, so now that I have the right fly on, we are in the home stretch, you guys. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and trim down this seam allowance right here that you just did. So I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm going to trim that seam allowance down, being careful not to literally cut into your pants, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut it right here at that dot and then just trim it down from this side instead. So I'm just going to trim it down just like this, being sure that you do not have anything underneath while you're cutting, okay? That's the last thing you want to do is work on your pants and you accidentally cut a hole in it, okay? Now that I have that trimmed down, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I press my seam allowance towards my right facing, and then I'm going to understitch. Understitch is done at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, so I'm going to press that, and then I'm going to be stitching on the facing at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, all right? So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I have it pressed. Now what I'm going to do is put my presser foot at 1/4 of an inch, put my needle down and my presser foot down. I'm going to line up my fabric to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to use a regular length stitch. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. So let's go ahead and sew all the way to that dot now, under stitching, back stitching at the beginning and at the end. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I'm approaching that dot, I'm going to go ahead and back stitch, being sure, back stitch, cut my threads, and that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and continue. All right, so now that I have the understitching done on my right fly, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and turn your left fly, like you have here, to the inside. It should look like this. Now you're going to take this side, your right fly, push that to the inside like this, all right? So this is what it should be looking like right now, all right? Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the right side, left side when looking at it, okay? That's where you have this because that's what you are getting ready to create here shortly. But you want to make sure that it's even, the lines are even, your waistband lines are even, okay? And you want to bring that over, like lap it over your zipper, okay? Just like this, because it's going to lap over your zipper and you're going to create a line, okay? So I'm going to bring the instructions. We are now at, I think, number 19. All right, so this is where we are, number 19. Turn facing to inside, did that. Press, did that. Lap right front over left, which I did that. Matching centers with right waistband seam lines, even with the left waistband seam line. Did that. Now we're going to base across, base close to edge through all thicknesses. So when it says base close to edge, it's talking about right here, okay? That's where we're going to be basting, close to the edge right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a pin right there, like this, and pin that in place through all thicknesses. All right, so now that I have that in place, make sure that your waistband lines up with no issues. I'm going to make sure my waistband lines up. That is one of the things that I want to make sure of. I want to make sure my waistband lines up really good before pinning everything in place. And it lines up really good. So now I could pin this top portion in place because you don't want a janky waistband. You do not want your waistbands to be off. So I'm going to pin that in place, all right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to base close to this pressed edge, all right? So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I have it basted close to this edge. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up just a little bit for you guys to see. So I'm just going to open it up so you guys can see this area. So right here, this side is the right fly facing. So you want to pin the zipper teeth to the right fly facing right here, okay? You're going to actually stitch and not baste. So you're going to stitch from the top to the bottom, just stitch it on, making sure you're not stitching it to your pants, just on the right fly. Now, I'm not going to show this portion at the sewing machine, but I'll show you what it looks like after I go ahead and do that. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have that zipper stitched onto the right fly, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating this curve right here for my right fly, I guess you could say, the right fly portion. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to stitch on top. So what I'm going to do to keep it in place, I'm going to use pins, and I'm just going to pin that area to keep it in place. All right. So make sure that you are actually pinning on that area. All right. Now, what it says in the instructions, we are on step number 21. Okay. We're going to turn the right fly facing to inside. It's already on the inside. On the outside, which is the right side of your fabric, we're going to stitch the right front along that stitching line, and we're going to keep the left fly free, which means that this portion right here needs to stay out of the way. This portion right here, okay? So we're just stitching on the right fly area. Make sure that it's not bunched up underneath, and I'm going to pin all the way up, all right, on what I need to stitch. All right, so go ahead and pin in place, and then we're going to go ahead and create that line. I don't feel like I need to show you this on the sewing machine, but just follow your guide all the way down to the end. We're going to back stitch at the beginning, so all the way down and back stitch at the end. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and created that stitching line, now what I'm going to do now, you can go ahead and take out the basting stitch now, because you're going to need to, but I'm going to say be careful taking this portion out. Now, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tack the rest of this down. I'm just going to tack across right here, and then cut off the remainder of my zipper. All right. So I'm going to do that off camera here in a minute. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up this basting stitch. So let me go ahead and open it up. Go ahead and take out those basting stitch that you created in the front now. Go ahead and do that now. All right. So now that I have the basting stitch done, this is what your fly zipper should look like. Okay, that's what it should look like. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and attach that, and then all we have left to do is basically our waistband. All right, so let me go ahead and tack that, and then we can start working on our facing waistband. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have went ahead and trimmed down my zipper, okay, and really secured it. Now what I need to do is, because this line does not go all the way to the edge, I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to basically stitch from where I ended all the way over, so the waistband is in place, okay, in place. So I'm just going to do that, and using a regular length stitch, I'm going to start where I ended and then sew across. All right. Let's go ahead and do that now. If yours is like mine, all right, go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and finished the waistband all the way to the edge, go ahead and grab your other waistband, and what you're going to do is you're going to pin this onto your waistband, okay? So basically all you're going to do is match up the side seams, okay? So I'm just going to start with the side seams, match it up, and pin the waistband facing to the waistband all the way around, all right? So go ahead and do that now. Oh, one thing I want to mention is make sure you keep the carriers out of the way. Do not pin those yet. So go ahead and pin all the way around now. All right, so just real quick, I went ahead and pinned my facing waistband onto my pants. If you notice, I went ahead and cut a new waistband out. I ran out of pink fabric. And one thing that I realized is that the facings were not interfaced on the proper side. Okay. Now I'm going to take a piece of paper and kind of draw this out. I'm going to draw it in a sense of rectangles instead of the actual pattern piece. Well, actually, I'll draw it according to the pattern piece. Now, I'm not an artist. I don't do that, but I am sensitive about my stuff. Like Erykah Badu says, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my But I'm actually just being funny right now. But we are going to look at pattern piece number 12, 10, and 11, which are these pattern pieces right here. So basically, when you look at this right here, it's all curved. So when you are putting it together, I'm just going to basically do it like this. You can see that. All right, let me cut this piece off. All right, it's just too big of a piece. All right, so this is pattern piece number 12. And this is the right side of the pattern piece, okay? So this is the right side of the pattern. When it doesn't matter if you're doing the interfacing one or the one that's not interfaced. What you need to do is you need to, on this side right here, you need to attach pattern piece number 11, okay? So when you sew up these seams, right? This is pattern piece 11. So with right sides together, you need to put 11 on top of 12 and sew the side seam, which is the right side seam of 11, all right? And you need to put 10 over here. Sorry about that. And then this one is number 10, okay? So when you have right sides together, 10 is over here, 11 is over here. You have a notch on the side for 10 and 11 on the right side. And on 12, you have a notch on both sides, all right? So match 11 up with the right notch on 12 and match 10 up with the left side of number 12, all right? Make sure you put your facing on. So I had to cut a new waistband for that, all right? So that's just to recap why I had to put on a new waistband. But like I said, we're in the home stretch. So what I'm going to do using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, make sure you keep your carriers out of your way. I'm going to start in the center back using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way to the front, and then back stitch at the front. Do that on both sides. After I do that, I'm going to make sure that this bottom is pressed up, right? And I'm going to, after doing that, I'm going to come down the front at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. It says that on your pattern piece, okay? So on the pattern piece, the front needs to be at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? So make sure you do that and then come in at the bottom. I think that's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let me get pattern piece number 10 to tell you. All right, so project bags is the link is in the description box below before you ask me where did I get my project bags. Okay, so the bottom is 5/8 of an inch, and it looks like the front where the let me get the other pattern piece. Yeah, no, this is pattern piece number 10. So it looks like 5/8 in the front, and then 5/8 at the bottom. So on pattern piece number 10, that's the center front where you have the buttonholes. It's 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top, the front, and the bottom. So you're going to sew at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now on the other side, you're going to have 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top and 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on this edge right here, okay? So yes, there is an edge that you're going to have to do. So just make sure you know. So basically what it is what I would do is I don't have that top to sewn up. because I undid it or pulled it out because I need my interfacing to sit properly, okay? Just like that. So if you have that part finished off, take it off because you're going to need to make it flushed all the way around. So unpick that part. You're going to sew at 3/8 of inch seam allowance from the bottom all the way up to the top and across at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right. So I'm not going to show this at the sewing machine because I feel like you could do that yourself, but just make sure that it's looking like this. So basically the portion where you have your left fly, I think, yeah, that's the left fly, which is pattern piece number 11. 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and at the front right here, 5/8 all the way around. All right, 5/8 at the top, front, and bottom on pattern piece number 10, where you have your buttonholes. All right, so go ahead and do that now. Trim it down and then turn it right side out. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the waistband on, there's some loose threads that I need to go ahead and take care of myself. The only thing you need to do, you can do this yourself. First, you need to open out your, go ahead and do the buttonhole, open that up. My fray check has dried, so I'm just gonna go ahead and open this on camera from you. Be careful not to cut through your stitching. So that's what it looks like. And this actually is going to go on that button that goes underneath there. That's what it's going to look like, okay? There's a button that's going to go right there. That's where that goes, okay? So it's basically, you're going to put a button right here. And I would say hand sew it. So put it right there. So I'm going to put my button here before I finish off the bottom portion of my waistband, okay? So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing you want to do, you're going to add 2 buttons right here. You're going to add buttons right there. You're going to make a buttonhole right here. Add 2 buttons right there. You're going to go ahead and do your carriers. All you need to do is fold in about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then where that dot is, you're going to stitch across. Or what you can do is, if you have room, you could stitch across right here using your sewing machine, okay? You could do either way, whichever one suits your fancy, all right? You're gonna make your carriers all the way around, do that. Then the only thing that's left for you to do is go ahead, try it on, and then hem it. After you hem it, you are all done with your pleated white leg pants. Y'all know I love these type of pants, okay? Well, that's it. All right, we made it. We made it. This is hashtag Make92025. This is project number 2. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the pattern review as well. If you make Simplicity 9926 the pants, make sure you tag me in your post at Rochelle.Handmade.Design here on YouTube as well as on Instagram. Well, that's it for this video, or that's it for this sew along. I'll see you in the next one.